for this episode, we're going to go ahead and bring our show to a close with the main segment, our topic of the week. So this, again, is something we don't normally do on the show, but we wanted to focus on this. We've always, this is an entertainment podcast. We've always wanted to cover different, pieces of entertainment. Obviously, video games is a big part of it, but one thing that we've always talked about is movies. And in the past couple of weeks, Adnan has actually been talking about, Scream the show and Scream the movie. And we talk about Wes Craven himself and things like that. Well, it's unfortunate, but Wes Craven actually passed away recently. It was earlier this week. I think it was actually on Sunday that the reports started coming out. He was 76 years old, and he died of brain cancer that he had been fighting in recent months. It's always a shame when anyone dies to cancer. I think cancer is a horrible thing, obviously. I mean, that's an understatement of the year. Of course, dying at, before your 80s, like not even getting to... He had so much more life in him. You could just tell. He had so many ideas. He had so many different things. He had just recently done Scream 4. Things like that. So it's, of course, like, it's sad when anyone dies, but a horror legend like Wes Craven, it kind of, a lot of people connect with this man and his work. So we wanted to kind of like, make this segment of the show about, our thoughts on Wes Craven and things like that. Adnan, I know that obviously you're a huge horror buff. You love horror movies. I think that's an understatement. Like I mentioned, you've been talking about, like Scream, and I mean, you're watching Scream the show, and you're like, I gotta watch it though. Dude, what's your kind of like, what do you think of Wes Craven? I have not very little to say, but I'm very kind of like cornered when it comes to my Wes Craven info, and I'm sure you have more, than I do.
I was watching Scream 2 the day before he died.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. He is definitely one of horror's greatest icons.
Yeah.
Like, of all time. He really came in at a time where I think he originally said he was a teacher, which is kind of funny, and then like broke into the industry with like more of a kind of horror element to his films. He really did reinvent horror, especially in the horror teen genre.
Yes.
Nightmare on Elm Street brought that genre back to life, and I think like Friday the 13th as well at the same time kind of like went hand in hand and really created that genre, and especially the resurgence as well of the slasher genre. So a lot of it is accredited to Wes Craven. Scream in itself speaks tenfold about how brilliant he was as a horror director. If you go back and listen to my Talk Nerdy to Me segment, when I talk about Scream, I tell you how brilliant it is because it's just that kind of deception. Like every kind of like line links with this, and it's kind of that fact that he never ever wants you to know who the killer is until the final twist happens, and like just the kind of scenes and how they play out on you. There's always this question about if anyone could be the killer at this point. But like, yeah, it was just like his deployment of horror and how he studied the genre himself. He became an icon of that. He just became such an icon because he made things really blow your mind. I think, Never Sleep Again, the documentary on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, he kind of says like in the first 15 minutes of a nightmare, he wants to get that false perception that, I can't remember what her name is, the girl that's walking down the corridor in the white dress is the main character. Because he's dressed her in white, the killer is stalking her first, but it's not Nancy's the actual, heroine of the film.
Right.
And he kills her off, and it's just literally a red herring. So I think like he is brilliant director. I think he's even had his more controversial moments as well. Craven, Last House on the Left, which I think a lot of people have heard of, really did like draw a response from a lot of people. Have you ever watched it?
No. What is this?
Basically, it's a rape revenge film.
A rape revenge?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
It's almost like it's kind of own like part of its own genre. I don't think they call it like an exploitation horror film or something like that, but I think it's more, I normally do it just like rape revenge movies. Sort of like Kill Bill, but a bit more kind of, I think like Kill Bill technically falls into that kind of, like, film category. But, he basically, it was a rape revenge movie, and like just it was censored in like so many countries when the film was released. Like it just caused outbursts of controversy about it. But I mean, like, it was a very much for him, like, personally, Wes Craven, it was like a big move for him into the industry. That movie, like, I think that was his second movie he made. And like that kind of really propelled him to a new level. Like, people really recognized him. Then he made The Hills of Eyes, and he kept going. But I think like Craven hasn't really delved out of his like, you know, his genre of films, but he's so fucking good at making slasher films and horror films. I think like one of his pinnacle moments was Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Yes.
Like,
oh my
you know,
god. Yes.
It embodied like the essence of what Scream was with
dude,
A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, that movie was like, and you know, it's funny. I had seen, you know, I was aware of Nightmare on Elm Street, and at that point of the series, if I remember correctly, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street had gotten really silly, right? Like really goofy. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
They went off the beaten track like a long, long time ago.
Yeah, like Freddy just came off as like really, you know, silly and cartoony. I mean, he took out a fucking like NES Advantage or something and started like, you know, it got a little bit over the top, you know. And I think it's just because like people thought that's what people wanted. You know, it's almost like Jason Goes to Manhattan. You know, that was one of those things.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think this was like the precursor to Scream, because basically Craven got Nightmare and got those like kind of that commentary that he wanted to say about horror that he ended up doing in Scream, and kind of did that in Wes Craven's you know, New Nightmare. But man, he did it really good, because it's really weird. Like, it's almost like it's canonical to the series, and at the same time it's not. It's like its own, you know what I mean? It's like its own thing, but it's always bundled with movie. Like, they consider it part of the series, but at the same time, you know, it's not. And a lot of it is just like, I remember there's this one scene that I always tell people about it, where you know, Heather, who plays herself,
Heather Langstrom.
Yeah, who's playing a fictional version of herself. She goes and she talks to Wes Craven. She visits him, and it's such a great scene, because like Wes is basically like telling her, like, you know, like they talk about Freddy, and like he's like, you know, I just feel, I can't remember what the exact dialogue is, but he essentially says that Wes is like, I just had to keep writing the movie, and so he sits down and he starts like typing the next part, and like. Fuck, I'm really destroying the story, but he says something like exterior, you know, exterior, you know, Heather's house, night, you know, Heather walks out of her car, blah, blah, blah. And then as he's saying that, it crossfades to like the exterior of Heather's house, and it's nighttime, and Heather walks out of her car. And that blew me away. It's such a simple thing, but I thought it was so fucking cool. I really need to rewatch this movie, because I really think it's one of Wes Craven's like top 3 best films he ever made. I really have to go back and watch it. It's like up there with Scream. It's definitely, it could actually almost be tied with Scream as the best movie, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Scream will be above it though. But Scream was just a game changer in itself. It was just so great. I mean, like the first scene of I posted on the Facebook. I mean, like, Scream 1, spoilers, the killer scene where it reveals that Billy Loomis and Stu are the killers. Right. It's so fucking fantastic. And it's like when he's trying to explain his motive, he's like, she wants a motive, Stu. Like, you know, they just kind of like mock that entire kind of like concept throughout the entire film. And then he explains it. Even when Stu's like, and you know, your mom was no Sharon Stone. He does the hand movement. It's just like, he's just like, now you're not a virgin. Like, I can't believe you said that. Like, it has so many great moments in it. You can't like just express how great he was in that film. And even like where he puts Freddy Krueger in the film, like the kind of dressed up as way he's dressed up as a janitor. He's like, not you, Fred. But I think like even though he had his great films, Wes Craven did kind of like go off the beaten track in like his with the Scream franchise, definitely.
I mean,
I think Scream...
in general, I think like a lot of directors, period, kind of like they lose their, like, you look at Spielberg movies now and you look at young Spielberg films or middle-aged Spielberg and like, holy shit, he hasn't made a Saving Private Ryan in ages. You know what I mean? Like, and I think the same thing happened with Wes Craven as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Like, and like what you were about to say about the Scream series, like, you know, the same thing, like the series, like, I would say 1 through 3 is a solid trilogy. And then 4, 4 was weird. 4 was like, you could tell Wes was trying to, like, you know, appeal.
Modernize that.
Yeah, like appeal to the modern generation, and it so just did not work, you know?
Yeah, it shows that Scream was part of its time.
Right.
That was a 90s period thing. I think that's what Scream, the TV show, kind of like follows as well. He's an executive producer on that show, was an executive producer. And like, it just says it all because like, they're kind of like employing too much like, you know, Snapchat, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. And they kind of like lose the sense of what Scream was about being very satirical and like mocking horror and the fact that, you know, they're living a real life horror. Basically, they think that they're not living a real life horror movie, but they are. Mm-hmm. And it just had that kind of thing. I feel like the Scream show TV show still does a very good thing where it captures the fact that no one knows who the killer is. There are very, very many options open for it. It definitely has that down. But I think, like, overall, it doesn't get it. And I think Scream 4 kind of falls in that because it has so many characters that are newly introduced, like almost like a new generation that no one cares about. And it feels so out of place, you know, like with Dewey and, you know, what's the face now? Gail Weathers and, like, Sydney, they're all oddly placed. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's such a great... Oh, it's such a... Like, the voice actor as well. Hello, Sydney! It's like... fucking great voice. Like, such an iconic voice for Ghostface. But yeah, like, hats off to Wes Craven. Like, you know, what a legacy he's had. Yeah. He is definitely one of those greatest minds that, like, you know, horror will miss someone like him.
I mean, there will never be, you know, another Wes Craven. Like, most definitely. And, you know, his films, his legacy, you know... they will, you know, continue to go on. I think that there is going to be, like, people who are into horror movies, and they are going to watch Scream, and, you know, they're going to, like, appreciate as much as you and I do, and a lot of the horror buffs now. I was very fortunate to have seen Scream when it first came out in, not in theaters, but on home video back in 1996, I think, or 5, I can't remember. And I was very fortunate, to have been able to see it. And I remember as a kid, it scared the shit out of me, man. I mean, it was like... And, you know, remember, phones were a big thing. Like, you know, so if your phone rang, I'm like, who's there? You know, and we didn't have caller ID. So, like, you know, like, hello, Chris. You know, like, oh, fuck. You know? Like, you think about that sort of stuff. And,
well, it's very, like, satirical in the sense of, like, the American Pie reunion, where Stu goes and knocks on that house, and he's like, my car crashed and I don't have he says, my car crashed and can I come in and use your phone? He's like, don't you have a mobile? And Stifler's face just drops and he forgets that, you know, he's like, shit, I used to use that in the 90s, man.
Well, yeah, it doesn't work, you know, like,
yeah.
And yeah, that's a perfect thing. Like, they didn't really, I feel like they could have done more of that in Scream 4. They did the whole, like, oh, he has a Ghostface app or whatever. But I don't know. There is something missing of it. I know there's some studio discrepancies that they even did like some last minute rewrites and shit. And obviously, I know that what's his name, Wes. I don't think he was like too happy with it either. And I know that he even what's it called, like he even like went on and he was talking about, oh yeah, I don't think there's going to be a Scream 5 or a Scream 6 because the Weinstein brothers, they were super ecstatic about the Scream franchise being brought back. They thought it was money in the bank. They're like, oh, you make it, people will come. Like, you know, and not really. Like, it did modestly. I mean, it made its money back and more, you know. It wasn't like a bomb, but they were, I think, were expecting like Scream 1, 2, and 3 numbers. And it's like, dude, you don't wait 11 years after the third film and make another one and expect numbers like that. you're going to have a drop. That's just how it is. Like, it's not like there's been, like, people have been like, the recession of Scream movies must come to an end. We need it now. No one was saying that. It was just cool. I saw it in theaters. It was fun to see, but, I don't know. It kind of, like, is what it is. Oh, and I thought this was a very interesting point I wanted to bring up. So Wes Craven said the following. Apparently, in regards to the Scream TV show, he... during one of his last interviews before he passed away, he said that although he's credited as an executive producer, his involvement in the series is very minimal, and that he actually expressed he was upset that MTV didn't include the Ghostface mask. He thought he didn't like the blowjob mask. He didn't like that one. He wanted the yeah. I think it could work. I mean, I think it's fine. It's just like a new interpretation of it,
Yeah, definitely. It's trying to change things. It's just one of those things, isn't it?
Yeah. So, but well, I mean, I guess Wes, like we mentioned, the beauty of it is he'll always be there in his films, at least, and to all the people listening, I highly recommend, if you have not seen Scream, the original, do yourself a favor and see it now. Like Adnan mentioned, if you could go back to, I think it was last episode, Adnan spoke about, Scream because he had seen it recently. Go and watch it. It's a great piece of horror, what's it called? History. It's like, it really changed things up for the 90s. And it's not, and also there is one thing I want to bring up also. I really admire that Wes was able to laugh at himself too. Because if you remember his cameo in Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, where the monkey was the killer, like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jay and Silent Bob make a cameo in Scream 3 as well.
Right, yeah, like I love that. I love that little, like, camaraderie that Kevin and him had. I'd be very curious to see what Kevin feels, because that was, Scream 3 came out in 2000, and Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back came out a year later in 2001, so there was, like, they must have, like, back and forth that, like, they did Scream and then they did that. That's interesting, so I'd be curious to see, what his thoughts on that were. I think there was, like, something, they had some sort of bond or something. It's interesting. I would love to know more of that.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, we do encourage you guys to check out his movies. Nightmare on Elm Street, New Nightmare, Scream. They're all great movies, and just give it a shot. He was a good man. But all right, guys. Well, that's going to be it for this week on Gamer Headlines Show. Be sure to follow the Gamer Headlines Show on Twitter @TGH Show, and like our official Facebook page, the Gamer Headlines Show, for up-to-date episodes from Gamer Headlines' official podcast. Additionally, Gamer Headlines Show can be found on Podbean, Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, and of course right here, as always, at GamerHeadlines.com. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we will see you next week with a new episode.
See you later, guys.